Hey, Justin, thanks for coming on.
What's up, Matt? Round two. Let's go, baby.
I appreciate you coming back, man. This is fun. I got a lot of great feedback on the first time we talked. I think you talked to our course community too a while back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you are the founder of Creator Wizard. You're a sponsorship partnership expert. And now you're an author. You're the author of Sponsor Magnet, which by the time we publish this will be out. So that's pretty cool. And we're going to talk about sponsorships and stuff in the book and a ton more.
Sick, man. I'm excited. Yeah, author. I'm still trying that one on for size. It's a little weird, man.
Yeah, it's going to take time to adjust, but you're doing a great job. You got some great testimonials in the book, like Pat Flynn, Jay Klaus, and I'm excited to see you kind of really own this space and like own the word sponsor. That's something I talk about that I try and do with my business, and that I recommend other creators do. And it seems like you're trying to grab at every opportunity around it and take advantage of it.
Totally, man. It's pretty sweet feeling when as someone on like Twitter or like TikTok or something is like, I'm having issues with this brand. I don't know what to do. And then you like open the thread and it's like, you should talk to Justin. Like 8 people saying that. I'm like, all right. I feel like I've carved out maybe a little place for myself in this world.
Yeah, and you posted about this a couple months back. I remember seeing this post and resonating with it, where it's like, I forget what you said, but it's like you felt like there's not a lot of good information about sponsorships, and you wanted to own the space as much as possible. So you were kind of, pushing to do the newsletter, the event, the book. Tell me about that real quick. We'll get into the sponsorship stuff, but like, how do you think about that strategically?
So one of the big things that I learned building this business over the last 4 years or so has been that everyone has different learning formats or different learning styles. I'm a YouTuber at heart. That's how I got my start 15 years ago with my wife. And so video content has always been very comfortable to me. And so that was the very first content format I started, which was to like talk about sponsorship strategy and stuff. And so drifted over to short form. That felt like a small enough jump that I was like, okay, I'm going to go now be on Instagram Reels and TikTok and things like that. And then I was like, okay, you know what? I want to own my audience. I want to have a newsletter. So the written stuff was as much about owning the audience and having that connection as it was about a content format, I would say. But then as I thought about like my impact aspirations, there was these other two big content, basically vessels of learning that I hadn't tackled yet. The first was a book, right? And so this is why I decided to write my book, Sponsor Magnet, to basically take everything. Basically, it's like kind of a complete distillation of everything I know around brand partnerships, having done 500 of them personally myself with my wife, making over $5 million doing it, and also running an influencer marketing agency for about 7 years and paying out millions of dollars to other creators. And so basically taking all that knowledge, condensing it into this like $15-20 thing, be like, here, boom, here you go, everything I know about brand partnerships here. That felt very exciting. And then this last one about in-person events, which both you and I have started to and kind of go down this road, feeling like there is something special and magic about the experiential kind of breaking bread with people, being in person with them. And so I feel like I'm kind of building out the little kind of creator wizard cinematic universe, trying to do all these different things. And these are all theses. Like, I don't know if I hope the book is going to do well. I hope the event does well. But again, it's like I'm just trying to go with my gut and do what feels right.
Yeah, I think I've had the same type of feelings when it comes to newsletters and trying to own that word or that idea. And you've done that with sponsorships, and so I'm kind of doing some similar things with newsletters. But at the same time, it's really hard because all these things are essentially different business models. Like the book is its
Dude.
own thing, the event its own thing, newsletter, course, etc. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've also tried to like focus more too, especially this year. I've been dialing back some things just so I can focus more on what is working.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, contrary to that, is people do consume multiple different formats, and if you're building a media or creator business, you eventually need to be somewhat omni-channel, right? Like I have the
Mm-hmm.
same experience that you do, where people like they don't ever read my newsletter; they're just watching YouTube videos, or they're just listening to the RSS podcast, or they just took the course and they barely consume any of my stuff elsewhere. When
Mm-hmm.
you would think as the creator, the founder, that people are going through the journey that I designed them to go through, but that does happen, but not as often as we would like.
100%, man. And I can even I've even started doing this of like asking people. I try to be very conscious of like, how did you hear about me? What's the first way? Like, kind of walk me through like the journey of like how you came into my universe, especially if they signed up for the course or coaching or something like that. And it's oftentimes very surprising. Like people come in through the back door a lot of times, and I'm just like, oh, I didn't even know that landing page was still up or so, something, you remember how, have you ever done this where like you go through your own newsletter onboarding after not doing it for like 7 months, and then you start getting a welcome sequence and you're like, oh, I didn't know that email was still going out to people. Darn it. Right. So like, I definitely have experienced that. And so I think it's a similar thing where people may be hearing about you in a very surprising way, and you need to ensure, like, double check whether that's like still a pathway that you want, people to go down.
It's so important, and I think people underlook, onboarding or the sign up process so much, and because you kind of set it up once and forget about it,
Right.
and it's worth going back really on a monthly or quarterly basis and just optimizing that, because it's so important, the first impression that you have of people, not just the first touch, but what happens, the first 30 days afterwards. I'm working on that
Mm-hmm.
myself, and it's just like a repeating thing I have to tell myself. And that question, it's a really simple and almost generic question, like, how do you hear about me? But most people just don't ask it, and it is a huge ROI if you do take the time to ask that or put it into your business through a survey or something, because you would never expect where people hear about you and the channels that you can go and optimize to get more people to hear about you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people have said to me, like, yeah, I searched for the word newsletter in my podcast player and I found about you that way. And I'm like, I would have never thought someone would ever do that.
Dude, I asked this to someone the other day, and I said, hey, how did you hear about me? And they said, oh, well, I was Googling how much do I charge for a brand deal? And I was like, oh, let me go start Googling for terms. And sure enough, I'm like #1 for that. I'm such an idiot, dude. I'm so not, I am an idiot when it comes to SEO. And so I have not optimized any of my blog posts for this type of thing, but like, this is, people are doing these things there. So I should go back and I should upload those blog posts and make sure they're optimized and all that. But it's just, there's just,
It's a lot of
I'm
stuff.
sure dude, I'm sure you feel this. It's like, there's like an infinite to-do list when you're a creator, solopreneur, even with a small team. There's like always something to do. And it's just a matter of like you said, figuring out where to focus.
It is tough, and you got to focus. But one last thing I'll say on that is SEO I think is underrated right now, or just search in general. So not just Google search, but podcast SEO, etc. Because the high intent signups and followers and subscribers and leads you get from that, they're so high intent. They're in market for what you're doing. And I've found, just some data to share, is that we have this program. It's a cohort based course, and I think it was like 20 to 40% of those customers came from Google search, but I'm getting like 5% or less of my signups through Google search. So it's a small channel for me, but it's just converting like crazy. And I assume because of the high intent that those people have, they're actively looking for this stuff. They didn't just come across a post or an ad or something like that.
Right. Interesting.
Awesome. Well, so your book comes out. Can you tell the date that it comes out? It should be today, but
yeah, January 21st. It's live, baby.
All right. And where can people find it? Like Amazon, do you have a website for the book?
Yeah, so sponsormagnet.com is the best place, because then I can get to know you personally. That's the best part about getting the book directly from me. But yeah, it's available everywhere. But sponsormagnet.com is the best place.
Okay, and we'll put that in the description below if people want to click that or type in the URL. But I want to walk through a lot of stuff in the book. I also want to ask you some questions that I'm interested in, because I'm doing sponsorships and I talk to people about this a lot. But the subtitle of the book is How to Attract, Price, and Execute Your Dream Brand Partnerships. I would like to walk through those kind of step by step. And that's one of the reasons I like the book so much, is you do walk through everything, like from beginning to end, step by step, every detail you need to know. It's extremely actionable. And so I want this podcast to be the same. We won't cover everything, but maybe starting with attract. Are there any principles or frameworks that you have for actually attracting brands to work with you?
Yeah. So one of the things I talk about in the opening section of the book is designing something that I call your STP, or your surprising transformative promise. This applies regardless of what content format you have, whether it's your newsletter, whether you have social media platforms, podcasts, YouTube, whatever. One thing that I found when I was running the agency, and so to clarify, like I was not a talent agency. I did not have a roster of exclusive talent that I represented. I was more like an advertising agency where a brand or media agency would hire us to go out and execute a specific campaign. So they'd say, hey, Justin, here's 500K. We want to work with 200 influencers. Tell us what the strategy should be. Who should we work with, et cetera. And so one of the tasks that we often had as an agency was we worked with mainly kind of family friendly, very brand safe, traditional type brands, because that was kind of the wedge of our agency. And one of the exercises that we had to do is we had to vet the talent. We had to kind of do this digital audit of their online persona to ensure that they kind of didn't have any digital skeletons in their closet. Because you probably have seen, like, there have been brands who have worked with creators and then the creators went off and did something insane. And there was this massive PR crisis and the brand got blowback, right? And this actually happened to me when I ran the agency. And so it was a big deal for us where we had to go out there and essentially kind of kick the tires on creators, influencers, businesses to see, would this person be a good fit for the campaign? And the critical thing here to remember is that we would be kicking the tires on these people without even reaching out to them. We would be looking at their blog, we'd be looking at their newsletter, we'd be looking at their social presence, and we would say, does this seem like a good fit? And so we would extract a bunch of information about them and their family and their business and all that to essentially put into a deck that we would then send to the client and say, hey, here's the we just did a kind of quick analysis. Here's like 50 people. Give us like a soft thumbs up on like the top 20. Then they would say, okay, yeah, those are the top 20. Great. Then we would reach out to the people. And so this framework that I talk about called your STP, it's a really critical one. So let's break this down. So surprising transformative promise. Let me quickly share a story. I was working with a creator who's kind of in the fashion niche, and her bio, basically her about section on her social platforms at that time, was something like the cutest everyday styles, petite fashion with like some emojis or something. It was like, felt like a very generic kind of lifestyle fashion creator that you've probably seen this 100 million times on social media. So really not that interesting. After walking through this STP process, she basically decided to change her bio to helping you find. So there's like a promise at the beginning there, right? Helping you find the best petite outfits to look and feel your best. So the promise was that it's all focused on the viewer or the follower, right? The transformative thing is that I'm going to help you go from this to this, right? So there's an outcome here, and then the promise is like, I'm going to actually help you accomplish this thing, right? Oh, sorry, we forgot the surprising thing. The surprising thing is like, wow, this person's focused on petite fashion, not just fashion, right? Yeah. And so the reason that this is so critical when it comes to attracting sponsors and brands is that, going back to my agency, my number one goal when I was vetting talent was, is this person's audience filled with our ideal customers for this campaign? It's not about the creator. I don't really care about the creator or the influencer. That's table stakes. Like, are they, as long as they are kind of family friendly, like I don't really care. What I really care about is like audience. Does their audience have an affinity for my client's product or service? And so the reason that the STP, designing an STP for yourself and your creator business, is so critical is that you allow the brand to see, oh, everyone in this person's audience is trying to accomplish this thing that our product solves. The problem that our product solves. And so that is a game changer. And the other beautiful part about doing this is that it actually makes your audience grow faster, because people realize, oh, it's not like this person's going to help me do this thing. That's really sweet. And I have a bunch of examples where people's audiences have grown after doing this exercise as well. So the attraction is as much about ensuring that brands understand the composition of your audience as it is about the types of content that you're creating. And so this is like a high level thing, but then there's a bunch of tactical stuff too, like making it easy for a brand to freaking email you, dude. I can't tell you how many times I would run across someone who was like, oh, this is a perfect fit, could not figure out a way to contact them, couldn't find their email address, their contact form was broken on their website. It was just like, does this person really like not want to like collaborate with people? So there's like low hanging fruit as well.
I'm glad you started with that, because I think that concept is the thing most beginners struggle with, both from an audience growth perspective and attracting brands to work with. And if they figure that out, that can unlock so much more in their business overall. And
Mm-hmm.
for just making it easy to contact you, I think that's worth diving in a little bit deeper, and maybe talking about some of the best practices there. Because there's one thing to make it like somewhat easy, and then you could also make it super easy and have an even higher conversion rate to convert those inbound interest or those inbound leads into a partner. How do you think about that? How do you think about just optimizing, okay, your social bios, website, et cetera, to maximize the inbound interest that you're getting?
Dude, this this advice was like earned through just like so much strife over the years running this agency. Let me tell you a quick tactical example of like how easy it is to miss this. So the first piece of advice I can give is like include your email address in plain text in every single bio that you have out there on the internet, not just utilizing the feature of the platform where they say, hey, enter your email address here. The reason that this is important is that, let's say, for example, on Instagram, a brand like me, if I'm an agency and I'm representing a brand, I do not have access to the brand's social handle. I am a third party that they've contracted. And so if the only place that I have to contact you is in the like contact me DM button on Instagram, I don't want to send you a message from my personal Instagram. Right? A lot of these people, account executives working at agencies or whatever, they don't want who's this person in my DMs? It's like random. Like they have like 50 followers and they're saying they represent this big brand. A lot of people just will dismiss that type of message. And so I want to be able to, as an agency, just copy and paste your email address from your bio into my email client and send you a message saying, hey, I represent this brand. Do you want to collaborate with them? So it can be something as easy as just like putting your email address in plain text. Okay. The other thing too is making your media kit public. This is a big one. If you have a partnerships deck or a media kit, a lot of people don't want to publicize this because they have number one, they have pricing in the media kit, which you should not do. We could get into that later. Yeah. But they have it upon request. So they say, oh, send a message to me and I'll send you a deck. That's dumb. Remember what I just talked to you about, how I was kicking the tires on people before reaching out to them? If you can give me as much information as possible to advocate for you to my client, that's going to increase your chances. So putting case studies and testimonials, and yes, of course, like the high level audience data and demographics and all that stuff is good. But you know what I would also really love? I would love psychographics. If you have psychographic information about your audience, that is gold. Because remember, going back to the whole thing around, I need to know, my goal is to understand that the composition of your audience is filled with our ideal customers. That's my goal as a brand or an agency. And so if you have survey data that you have done with your audience, and this is also something I talk about in the book, is like understanding like what are their problems, what's keeping them up at night, are they married, do they have kids, what types of jobs do they have, what types of brands and products and services are they using and loving and interested in right now. If you have survey data like that, oh my god, that's so gold to be able to just tell people, here, yes, this is the composition of my audience, this is what they care about. That goes so far.
Yeah, and do you have any, this is a small thing, but do you have a preference on, should that media kit be like a PDF people can download, or a Google slide deck, or just could that media kit just be a page on their website that
Totally. It could
open?
just be a page. It could totally just be a page on the website. A lot of people obsess over the media kit, the partner deck, dude. And I think it's not a good practice, mainly because people treat it as kind of this boilerplate exercise that they do once and maybe never again. And they just copy and paste, send it out, attach the PDF, whatever, to whatever brand comes inbound. But in my opinion, it's a much better, it's a much better thing to hold on to that strategically, and only send that at a specific place during the negotiation when the brand needs that, or you're able to curate a specific case study that you can add into that deck to send to them to really get it over the finish line.
And two more things on this. Are there any other type of psychographic information that we should survey our audience about, or like common questions or things that you would want to see?
Yeah. So there's this, I have this principle that I talk about called audience first offers. And the other two questions that you need to be asking are there any products or services that you wish that I offered that I don't? And are there anyone that you'd love to see me collaborate with in this industry, and why? So those two other questions. So my audience first offers framework is, I call it your PSA, your products, your sponsors, and your alliances. So as anyone listening to this, probably we have a smattering of people who are doing different things. We have some people who are selling things directly to their newsletter audience, right? Courses, coaching, whatever it is. Then we have another smattering of people who are mainly monetizing through sponsors, right?
Yes.
And then this last bucket is something that a lot of people don't think about, which is alliances. And so the reason that I want to talk about this real briefly is that a lot of people feel like, well, okay, let's say I sell my own thing. I don't want to talk about sponsors. Why would I talk about sponsors when I can plug my own course? I'm going to make way more money on that. I don't want to do that. And similarly, people who talk about sponsorships, like, I don't want to sell things directly to my audience. That's scary. That's nerve wracking. I don't want to have sales conversation, et cetera. And then this final thing, it's like, well, I don't want to tell my audience about my friend's course, because if they take his course, then they're not going to buy my course. So it's this kind of scarcity mindset view. And so when I talk about audience first, what it really, at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's not about how much money you make. It's not about lining your pockets. It's about serving your audience and solving their problems. And so there are a lot of things in this world that you're never going to make a course for, Matt, that I'm never going to make a course for, right? Yeah. And so it is my job, if my audience identifies a problem or an issue that they're having, it's my job to go out there and find a sponsor who can solve their problem. Let's say that you have a bunch of SMBs in your audience, someone listening to this, right? And you do a survey, you do that psychographic survey that we talked about, and 30%, 35% of respondents come back and tell you that, oh, I actually have a brick and mortar store. And here you were thinking that everyone in your audience were like internet entrepreneurs, right? All of a sudden you may be thinking, wow, they're all saying that they're having issues, whatever, aligning their in-store inventory with their e-commerce inventory. I should probably go out there and pitch Square or Shopify or someone who has a POS, solution that could help them solve this issue that they're having. I've never thought of that as like something that I should talk about, but clearly like a big chunk of my audience is having this issue. So it's my job to go out there and pitch that sponsor and say, hey, how much more of a compelling pitch is that, by the way, now versus like, hey, I love your tool. I love your brand. I've been using it for 3 years. Now it's like, hey, I've got 40% of my audience who's having this active issue. Like, I would love to expose my full audience to them. And then this final bucket, the alliances, it's so critical, dude. I mean, if your audience is saying, I'm having HR issues, or I'm having payroll issues, or I'm having whatever it is, if you go say, hey, you should go hire my friend, Kathy, she's a HR coach or a leadership training coach, I think she could really help you. They're now going to look more favorably for you, so that when their business is healthier and they're ready to take it to the next level and actually launch a newsletter or whatever, they're going to trust you more. And so this PSA, I think, is kind of a game changer and helps you unlock just a much kind of audience first perspective. And the secret is you'll actually make more money doing it.
A lot more. And I think that, this is kind of outside of just the sponsorship conversation. Most people we're talking to, they're media businesses, creator businesses. They have a newsletter and they probably have multiple channels. But most of these types of businesses, you should have sponsorship offerings, and you should have a product that you actually sell to your audience. And then you should probably have, hopefully this is a smaller mix of your revenue, but some referral or affiliate relationships too. Mm-hmm. You don't want 90% of your business to be affiliate for reasons we don't need to get into. But it's I always find it crazy when people are like, they never sell anything to their audience, but they have a massive audience, or they have a massive audience and they only monetize just 1 or 2% of that through their product. And right. I think both of those, ideals are crazy. Right. And you called out some common reasons why people have that, the wrong mindset about that. But I think it's worth noting. And also, if you missed this, like, I would just go back and listen to what Justin just said about how we changed that pitch, where it's like, hey, I love your product, versus, hey, X% of my audience needs this. Here's the data, and then we'll talk more about what could be in that pitch later. But that's such a big shift that's going to help a lot of people. And then one final question about the inbound thing is like, what do you think about, I think I know your answer, but what do you think about people who have like sponsor us and then they go to like a 10-question Google form just to get in touch with them about sponsorship, and there's no email there? Like, what do you think about when brands do that, or when creators or publishers do that, I should say?
I understand why they do it. They want to filter out, people who aren't serious or people who don't have enough money, and they have their kind of minimum number that they'll get out of bed for. And I understand that, but I can call out many, many countless situations where I simply had a conversation with the brand who's told me that their budget was X, and the deal that we ultimately forged was 5X. What they said that their budget was, simply because I was willing to get on a phone call with them. I was acting interested. I was interested in their business challenge, and we kind of collaborated to figure out how we could work together. They may, because again, my wife and I have been on the internet for a very long time. And so the majority of the brands who come inbound are asking something for like a very narrow scope. They're saying, hey, how much for like a one integrated YouTube video or something, or how much for a newsletter blast or something very, very small. And so getting on a phone call with them and saying, hey, instead of just being like 1,500, which is like what most people do, I get on a phone call and I say, well, tell me about, what are you trying to accomplish? What is your goal? What are your success metrics here? And they'll oftentimes come back with wildly different things. And I will ultimately advise them. I say, hey, I know you wanted to know like about an integrated YouTube video, but I actually think it would be way better if we did an integration on the newsletter, or we did an integration on the podcast or something, for the following reasons, right? And so I do understand the temptation to have an ingestion form and try to insulate yourself from people who are unserious. But I do think that you're letting a lot of significant opportunities fall through the cracks. And frankly, a lot of brands just don't have a good understanding of what they're trying to accomplish. And so some of the questions that you have on your questionnaire, they just may not even know, and then just not hit submit because they don't understand the budget. They don't really know what their goals are. They don't even know if you'd be interested. So this is another thing. A lot of people have a prefix menu of like, here's the way in which you can collaborate with me in my media business. It's this, these 5 packages. The brand looks at that and they're like, well, we actually wanted to fly Matt out and be the keynote speaker at our event, but it doesn't seem like that's one of the 5 options. So I guess he's not interested. So you're missing the boat here. There's a lot more money on the table. And yes, maybe it means hiring an ops person or hiring a biz dev person or whatever to help you filter some of this inbound. But it's a huge mistake, I think.
Yeah. Anything else we should mention about attracting before we get to pricing? And we can talk about, potentially we could talk about outbound after we talk about pricing, depending on which order you want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like a universal piece of advice about attraction is just like be responsive. Responsiveness. If there's one quality that I had to rate as like a leading indicator of someone who's going to be a good partner and someone who's professional and reliable and all that, is like they don't take 3 days to get back to you. Especially for a lot of the opportunities, if it's like a quick turnaround time. Let me share this example. I just got an email about 15 minutes ago, right before this podcast, from an agency that we worked with many times. And they said, hey, April and Justin, this is a crazy last minute opportunity, but we know you guys are super like responsive. Are you interested in this? How much would you charge? We need the concept by tomorrow and we need the content by Monday. Like, are you interested in this? And I responded within 7 minutes. I'm like, yes, give me the details. Tell me more, this type of thing. And so you develop this reputation, honestly, for professionalism, for responsiveness. And this is one of the secrets kind of thing that I talk about in the book, is like, this is how you develop a reputation amongst brands and agencies as kind of a go-to person.
Yeah, and that may seem obvious to some people, but first of all, it's more challenging than some people think, especially when you're operating at scale.
Yep.
And it's also the number one complaint I've found with the advertisers that I talk to. They're not happy with the responsiveness on everything, reports to getting back to it. So it gives yourself a huge advantage if you can do that. One of the most common questions I get from people I talk to about sponsorships is pricing. How do you price sponsorships? And everybody's looking for a cookie cutter answer. And I'd like to give them a framework, but I also understand there's not always just a perfect formula. But how do you think about pricing?
So let's go back to this suggestion that I gave around getting on a phone call with a brand. This piece of advice is so critical because there's 3 different goal types that brands will tell you when you ask them what success looks like. 100% of the time, it's going to be one of these 3 things. So I call it my ARC framework, which is something I talk about in the book. So A stands for, this is an awareness campaign. So the reason that they want to collaborate with you is to just spread the word. Maybe it's a new product, it's launching in a new territory, it's a seasonal promotion, et cetera. The R in the ARC framework is repurposing. So the primary reason they want to hire you, Matt, is to take this great newsletter you wrote and repurpose it on their blog. Or if it's a social media creator, maybe video creator, take this content, maybe use it for paid advertising, put it on an e-commerce website, something like that. And then the C is conversion. So yeah, they care about sales. They care about app downloads, clicks, trial signups, whatever. And the reason that it's so critical that you need to ascertain as a creator what their goal is that your pricing has to change. This is why having standardized pricing on like a media kit or on a website or whatever, like you mentioned earlier, is such a big mistake, because let's explain this by working backwards. So I know a lot of the folks, I mean, I've been on your newsletter for a long time and you publish tons of great stuff, but I know a lot of the folks in your world are very accustomed to the data. They think that every newsletter advertiser cares about, open rates and click rates and how many subs you have and all that, right? And so let's explain this by working backwards. So when it comes to CPA, or cost per acquisition metrics that a brand is caring about, right? Let's say that they hired Justin. They're looking at my, let's say, YouTube channel, and they're saying, okay, let's say Justin gets on average, 10,000 views on a video. We are assuming that of those 10,000 people, let's say 10% of those people click on the link in the description box, right? That's 1,000 people, right? Of the 1,000 people that hit this landing page, we think, let's say 25% of those people are going to sign up for a free trial. So that's 250 people. Of the 250 people, 20% maybe are going to sign up for a paid plan. So that's 50 people. Our software costs $10 a month. The average retention is 10 months. So our lifetime value is $100. 50 people times $100, that equals $5,000 in revenue from this partnership. But they don't want to pay you $5,000. That's the break even, right? They're going to pay you a fraction of that, half, third, fourth, whatever their risk tolerance is. I don't know, maybe less. And so the reason that it's oftentimes so difficult to negotiate with a brand that has a conversion-focused metric is because of this math that they're beholden to internally, that they cannot exceed. Contrast that with an awareness-focused campaign, where the brand says, we just want to spread the word. We want, what are the KPIs? What are the metrics that a brand in that situation cares about? Views, impressions, engagement, comments, opens, kind of some of these higher level metrics that are less about the conversions. And they probably don't have your contact doesn't have their boss breathing down their neck saying, how much did that, newsletter integration we did with Matt, how many sales or trial signups did that drive? That's not what they're saying. And so your negotiating leverage in those scenarios absolutely skyrockets. And so this is the number one highest leverage piece of advice that I can give, is like, you just you cannot have standard pricing. Your value and your worth to a brand is very different depending on what the brand is trying to accomplish. And so I think that there's these two frameworks that I talk about. It's the ARC framework about the goals, which is basically 50% of the pricing equation. And then the other 50% is something that I call the DO rule. DUE. So it's deliverables, usage rights, and exclusivity. So the deliverables is as it sounds. What exactly do they want you to do, right? How many newsletter integrations, how many social amplification posts, podcast insertions, whatever it's going to be. U is usage rights. This is one that I think not enough newsletter operators think about. But there is actually quite a bit of utility in the brand being able to repurpose the content that you're generating for them, especially if it's like a pretty in-depth testimonial that you're giving them in your newsletter on their blog, right? Maybe repurposing this for paid advertising. Maybe you could do some sort of video where you read the ad or something like that. There's value there, right? And so there's both the organic usage rights as well as paid usage rights. And you can make a lot of money on paid usage rights. I think not a lot of people realize that. And then the final aspect is exclusivity. So there are some advertisers who will say, hey, you cannot, if we partner with you over these next 6 months, you cannot work with any of our competitors for a certain duration. And that represents a direct opportunity costs for you if another brand reached out to you into that category and you're not able to work with them. And so those are kind of the two main buckets. And we can get into more detail about how I think about pricing, but those are the kind of from a high level how I think about it.
Yeah. And so I imagine we're going to change pricing based off of what their goals are, ARC. Mm-hmm. And then what was that, the second acronym? Deliverables.
The DO rule, DUE.
DUE. So deliverables, DUE.
Deliverables, usage rights, and exclusivity.
Yeah, so obviously if they want more exclusivity, more usage rights,
right.
Higher fee for that, etc. And I love that because it kind of gives you these like different toggles that you can dial up or down depending on what they need. Mm-hmm. And you can develop a pricing framework for that or for each individual brand that you're working with.
Right.
One thing it's hard for us to like give people exact pricing because we don't know what their audience is, who's in their audience, what channels they have. So we're not going to be able to do that, but maybe we can talk about what type of packages people should consider offering, because a lot of people, actually most people just have one. And so the YouTuber just has a pre-roll, the newsletter operator just has a primary ad, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
How should people think about packages? And maybe if you could break down some examples of different packages or sponsorship offerings or products that people could use.
Okay. So there's two main things I want to say here. Number one, if you are a creator that is identical to what Matt just described, where your only negotiating lever in your packages is quantity, your biggest goal and focus for 2025 should be ensuring that that's no longer the case. You have at least one other distribution channel, one other content format that you can use as part of these negotiations, whether that's another social handle platform, whether it's a private community, whether it's finally starting a newsletter, whether it's an in-person event, whatever it is, you have another thing, another type of thing that you can offer to a brand when you're negotiating with them. Because the biggest mistake I think a lot of folks make is, maybe you do put together packages, right? But the only variance between those packages is package 1, 5 newsletter blasts. Package 2, 10 newsletter blasts. Package 3, 15 newsletter blasts. And the only incentive that a brand has to pick package 3 is maybe a price concession. They say, hey, we'll give you a 10% discount or something for package 3, which is, dude, face it, that's not that compelling for a brand because they want to probably see how it goes first before they commit to a longer term engagement with you. So it's just not compelling. And so the better strategy, okay, when you're putting these proposals together for brands, you know what page 1 is going to be, Matt? Page 1 is what I heard. It's the goals that you ascertained in the call. So when you're on that call, probably the brand said a lot of goals. They said, oh yeah, sales. And you know what? Yeah, awareness would be great. And yeah, maybe we could get the content repurposed too. That's awesome too. So a lot of brands will say they want all these things, right? And so you regurgitate those goals in the very first page of the proposal. And then when you transition into the packages are tied to the goals. This is a game-changing change to your strategy. So package 1 becomes the awareness goal. That's where they're, sponsoring Matt's podcast and we're doing a dynamic ad insertion for the entire back catalog. Oh, you've got this seasonal promotion. Great. For 30 days, I will put this across all of the episodes of the podcast, all 50, 100 episodes, whatever, that you get full court press so people know about this thing. That's the awareness package. Package 2 does not have podcast ad insertions in them. That is the repurposing goal type for that package. So they said they wanted content. Well, okay, great. I will film 3 30-second videos for you that you can use for ads. I'll vary the hook. I'll change up the call to action. That's what package 2 is. You know what package 3 is? Okay, that's the conversion one. That's where I'm going to do the newsletter blast. That's where I'm going to post on my YouTube community tab with a survey or a link to a webinar registration or whatever. And guess what package 4 is? Package 4 includes everything. And the only way for them to accomplish all of their objectives is to pick the top package.
I love that. And maybe if we could, I think these examples are really helpful because a lot of people don't even think, oh, I could do that dynamic podcast insertion for all my episodes. A lot of people don't even know that's possible. Also, do you use any tools for that, or you just edit the podcast?
You can just you use like tools like Transistor. That's what I have on my podcast, and you just literally create an ad and choose when you want the duration to be. You upload the file, and boom, you're done. It takes 5 minutes. And so you're right. Like understanding what are the levers that you have to pull in your back pocket when you're negotiating with these brands is critical. Another thing, dude. Okay, so let me share just a quick example. One of my longest running coaching clients, his name is Paul Jameson. He has a podcast called the Green Industry Podcast. You're going to love this, Matt. He teaches lawn care professionals how to grow their business. That's his business.
Cool. I do love
He's getting 150,000 downloads a month on his podcast because, these guys are like, they're on their mowers 8 hours a day. They got their AirPods in and they're just listening to him all day long, right? So it's just, you think about the persona of the audience, right? And so, he's done lots of, traditional type sponsorships, on the podcast and social media and all that. But one of the most recent deals he did was one of his most lucrative. And it was with John Deere, the gigantic tractor company. And he got on a call with them because they wanted to discuss a collaboration. And he said, hey, so what's important to you right now, John Deere? And John Deere said, well, Paul, the largest trade show of the year in our industry is happening in October. We want you to sit in the booth for all 3 days and podcast. bring your friends in, interview people on our marketing team. We just want you to be there. All the press are there, all the videography people, all the important people in our industry. We want you, which is basically the key opinion leader, the luminary in this industry. We want you to be there with our logo in your background, filming all sorts of awesome content. And oh, by the way, we're going to back a dump truck full of cash and drop it on your doorstep for this. So does that sound like a standard sponsorship? Not really, right? Because again, he was open-minded. He said, what's important to you right now? And guess what? This is what brands have budget for, dude. This is what they have budget for, their own initiatives. They don't have a budget to sponsor your rinky-dink newsletter. Sorry. That's not what they care about. You know what they care about? They love your rinky-dink newsletter because of what you represent. You seem like the most important thing, and you have the newsletter for it. You've got 5,000 really engaged people. Great. We don't care how many subscribers we have. We want you to come to our conference, or we want you to come and do an internal training for our employees, and we want you to do blah, whatever, right? And so I think if there's one takeaway I hope everyone gets from this conversation, it's a mindset of creativity. It's not just about what are the standardized packages that I can create. And of course, you can have some of that you hold tight to your chest. You've got this kind of standard things that you usually do, and that's great, and that's fine. But the moment a brand says, oh, we have this other thing that we're doing, is that important? Boom, let's go. Let's pivot. Sounds great. Let's talk about that. How can I help you there?
I love that. And these, I've talked to a couple of people who have done these kind of fly into conferences or trade shows and create content around it or host things. And those can be some of the most lucrative. And also it can be an audience growth opportunity for you because you're publishing content around it. You're covering it. You're talking to people there. And so you're getting paid to grow your audience. And some of your highest rates are going to come from that. Yeah. There's so much you can do. Like the internal trainings are great. Doing a webinar with a brand, like a joint webinar for brand, some of the highest rates for that. Even for the newsletter operators out there, another thing I don't see a lot of people do is publishing a dedicated deep dive about the brand as a newsletter. And then that's also a blog post on your website. And then the brand can also repurpose that content as advertorial, or take quotes from it and use it as testimonials. So there's so much more out there that people can do.
Dude, I got my course sponsored. How about we talk about that?
Yeah. Can you break that down? That's a good example. I've been thinking about doing that for mine. I probably will in the future.
So like I had all these creator economy companies in my inbox, right? So I have a course called Brand Deal Wizard where I teach you how to do this stuff. And I had all these companies in my inbox being like, hey, we want to work with you. And in particular, we want to get in front of your course students. And you know, the reason that they wanted to do that is because these people are paying multiple thousands of dollars. They've proven that they're willing to take out their credit card and invest in their business. That is a very, very specific type of customer persona, right? That's a very valuable type of customer that these brands want, or these software tools want to be in front of. And I didn't have a way for them to work with me, and so for the course. And so what I did is I decided I just invented something, Matt. I invented something called the Rising Creator Grant, and I said, I've got all these people in my audience who are like really great candidates for participating in the course, but for whatever reason, they can't financially afford it at this time. And so I said to the brand, hey, if you sponsor 5 seats in my course, basically you pay their way, these creators, I will give you a massive shout out during the course on social media. I'll talk about how you were, supporting this initiative and this grant that I've put together. If you purchase a certain number of seats, I will have your VP of marketing come in and do a guest session during the course. The creators absolutely love the brand now because they got to participate for free. So they're huge vocal advocates on social media about the brand. The brand is thrilled because they get in front of the audience they wanted to, and I get more course enrollments. It's like win, win, win. So I think it's not just about, I think I talk about this in the book. It's like every sponsorship you do has to be this kind of win, win, win. A lot of times we're focused on the first two, which is like, how much am I getting paid? And then the brand is winning because they're getting access to your audience. But it's that last win is like, what is your audience actually getting out of this? And if there's no win for them present, you have to engineer one.
I love that. And that's one of the best examples I've heard. And also some very actionable people can do and, make some more money, make everybody more happy.
Yeah.
So we dove into that stuff super deep. I want to talk about execution in a second, but when people are doing outreach, let's talk about some tactical stuff there. Like who, I think a lot of people are confused about who to reach out to. You know, what are
Okay.
the best job titles to target? How do you actually reach people who are decision makers?
Oh man. Well, I've got some great news for you, bro. If you flip to page 69, and I did not do that intentionally. If you flip to page 69 on my book, I have something called the job title targeting matrix. And this is exactly what I've done is I have broken it down by um, size of company. This is a really important insight, which is that depending on the scale of the organization, the job titles that you need to target changes. So if you are targeting, let's say you have a hyper local newsletter and you're trying to target mom and pop shops in your local community, and you start looking on LinkedIn, and there's, the only person that you can find at this, chain of 3 coffee shops or something is the director of marketing. That's probably your person. There's probably only one person on the marketing team, and they're doing everything. They're wearing all the hats. They're doing the, Facebook ads. They're doing the penny saver ads. And if they're working with creators or, local media like you, they're probably doing that as well. And so that's your person. As companies get larger, let's say 15 to 100 employees, you start getting layers, right? So now maybe you have a manager, a marketing manager, maybe you have a coordinator, something like that. For a lot of consumer facing brands and even a lot of B2B brands these days, you will see the title influencer marketing manager, partnerships marketing manager. This is like a much more prevalent title that you're seeing in a lot of these brands now. And then when you're going after a brand that has 100 plus employees, conglomerate size, et cetera, you do have to split hairs a bit because there's a very real chance that they have delegated influencer or partnership strategy to an outside agency at that time, whether it's a media agency, a PR agency, an influencer agency even. And so there's titles that you can target at those agencies, but also brand. You can still target the brands directly, because ultimately they're the decision maker at the end of the day. But again, you have to educate yourself on the types of titles that you need to target, because I think what happens a lot of times is that, you try to reach out, you don't hear back, and then you convince yourself that cold pitching doesn't work. You say, I guess I'm just going to keep building and they'll reach out to me if they want to collaborate with me. It's like, what do you do if you receive an email that was obviously meant for someone else or it's not for you? You just delete it or you don't respond, right? And so educating yourself on like who's the actual best person to target just skyrockets your chances of getting a response.
And let's just list out some of these other titles that maybe companies that are 15 to 100. So influencer marketing manager.
Let me just open. Yeah, so we've got, okay, so I'll just read the list. We've got digital marketing manager or coordinator. Okay. We've got influencer marketing manager or coordinator, influencer strategist, partnerships manager or coordinator, affiliate marketing manager or coordinator. This is important to understand, is that the first foray that most brands have into partnerships is affiliate marketing. It's not flat compensated agreements. They think, okay, let's go out there and pay people 20% to, like, if they make a sale, the only thing we have to do is pay them if they make a sale. Great. That sounds like best case scenario. And so that's the first thing that they do. They build out and they may hire someone to handle that competency. And then as they grow, they think, maybe we should augment our affiliate strategy with a sponsorship strategy where we go out and partner and actually pay people in a flat capacity. It almost always happens where they will give that responsibility to the affiliate marketing manager. They don't hire another headcount for that. They just say, hey, can you do this too? Right. And so I've interacted with a lot of companies where it was actually the affiliate marketing manager that we were doing a flat deal with, because this was just on their plate. So the affiliate marketing manager, content marketing manager, or coordinator is a big one. This is important, dude. You have to understand that, like, if it's a content marketing manager, what do they care about? Content, right? They want, one of the things that you should pitch them is, how can they repurpose this stuff? They're probably the one who is planning out their social media strategy, their blog strategy, et cetera. And so if you're pitching a content marketing person, your pitch has to be very different than you just like giving them a shout out on your newsletter. They're probably not going to get that excited about that, right?
Yeah.
And then, like a creator partnerships manager or coordinator.
That's great. And sometimes for newsletters, performance marketing manager can be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
a great one.
Paid marketing manager or growth marketer can be a good one in that 15 to 100 size. And then less than 15, you're looking at, like you said, marketing director, head of marketing.
Right.
Sometimes CMO, but even a company that size wouldn't usually have a CMO. And sometimes the founder or owner if it's less than 10 employees.
I think that this is a big insight, and I have a column in this chart of like titles to not target as well. And like C-suite generally is just like not a good title to target generally, unless it's potentially if it's like, you know, the president of a very small company. But like C-suite is not a great title to target. Brand manager, a lot of times people will think, oh, brand manager, like that's like especially at a medium or larger size company, those people are handling the P&L. They have nothing to do with like paid partnerships. And so again, you just kind of have to educate yourself.
Do you have any tips on, how you send these outreach messages? Like, is it email, LinkedIn, all of the above? What type of things do you say in the copy of the initial outreach? How many emails do you send? Like, is it always a sequence of 2 or 3? Things like that.
So let's start with what do you say? Because I think this is absolutely critical, because if you say something terrible, it doesn't matter what you do. There's a pitching methodology that I talk about in the book called the ROPE method, ROPE. So R stands for your pitch has to be relevant to a campaign that the brand is either currently running or ran in the past. O stands for organic, meaning that you can tie your pitch back to organic work that you've already published that illustrates that your audience has an affinity for their brand or their product or their industry. Okay. P stands for proof. So you can show how you've helped other brands achieve results. And E stands for easy to execute. When the brand says, hey, yeah, this is interesting, what did you have in mind? And so the form that this takes, actually, should we do a real life case study for your podcast? Try to get it sponsored? What do you think?
Let's do it. My podcast or newsletter, whatever you think would be.
Okay, newsletter. Best. So tell me a dream brand, or like a couple brands you could think of. Oh, I'd love to collaborate with this brand.
Beehive is good. We've done some stuff with them. I'm talking to selfpublishing.com after this. Okay. All those are great. And I'm on the spot here, so I don't know anymore. But
yeah, self-publishing is good. This is selfpublishing.com, right?
Yes, that's the one I'm talking to later today.
Okay. So can I share my screen here? I'm just YOLOing here.
Yeah, would love that.
Okay. All right. I'm going to share my screen here, and we're just going to go for it. I'm going to walk you through the process of how I do this types of research. Okay. So we're looking at selfpublishing.com. And so what I care about is like understanding what does it seem like is important to this brand right now. This is research that probably you should be doing before you have a call with them. In reality is like, okay, I want to know like what is, and of course you could ask them these things, but okay, so I'm going to go to their main thing above the fold is become a best-selling author today. This is great. Ready to begin. Okay. So here's the different services. Look like they've got an accelerator, professional ghostwriting, et cetera, et cetera. This is great. Okay. They've got a trust pilot. I don't want to go there. I want to come back here. I want to just open this so I can look at it later. And then schedule call, new blog posts. Okay, this is good to know. Okay, I want to see what type of social presence that they have. I'm going to open up some of these links.
Yep.
Interesting that they don't have a LinkedIn there. Okay, so they've got an Instagram here. Okay, so first thing I noticed interesting, their CTA in their bio is for something that happened in November, which is not good. Like important that they need to like update this. Okay. So, video, they're doing video content. Let's see. When was the last time they, uploaded a video? This is 2 weeks ago. So self-publishing school. That's interesting. Okay. So one thing that I want to do, so this is a really interesting strategy. So you're getting on the phone call with self-publishing. We're sitting here, time of recording in January, right? So if you want to collaborate with them, depending on what their initiatives are, it may take 2 or 3 months for you to ultimately actually forge a deal with them, given that they plan these campaigns out probably multiple months in advance, right? And so if you're trying to pitch them some sort of like, you always wanted to write a book, time to do that New Year's resolution in January, probably not a great campaign because we're all like too late, right? Like too late for a New Year's resolution, write a book campaign. But you know what we want to know? What types of things was self-publishing talking about last April? Right. And so what I'm doing is I'm scrolling back for those of you listening on the pod. I'm scrolling back and I want to see what were they talking about last April. So we're in August right now. Okay. We're doing what's in May. Okay. So this is, okay, here we go. All right. So here's the pitch. We're in April right now. Right. They have this, event called AAL 2024. What's called Author Advantage Live. So you know what your pitch to them, let's say you didn't have a phone call on the books with them, Matt. Your pitch to them is, the subject line is Author Advantage Live in 2025, question mark. That's the subject line. And then the email opens, the relevancy is, hey, I saw that you were, drumming, you had early bird pricing for AAL ending, in the second week of April last year. Are you going to be running this again this year? And are you also going to be doing a similar promotion? I would love to help spread the word. I also talk about the importance of how, potentially you can transcend or transform your business as a newsletter operator by, writing a book and then you link an archive of one of your blasts of your newsletter where you talk about that. And if you don't have one like that, you make a post proactively before you pitch them strategically, right? That also serves your audience. It's not just to pitch the brand, it's to serve your audience as well. And then you say, I would love to help spread the word about this early bird ticket promo. If you're still doing this year, in the following way, I can do 5 newsletter insertions. I can, have, your head of marketing on my podcast. I can do XYZ. Happy to share some results of how I've collaborated with BuzzFeed and drove significant, results as well. Are you free on Thursday at 10 a.m. to talk about this? That's the pitch.
Yeah. What's cool about this is just spending like 60 seconds of research is going to give you a 100 times higher response rate than just sending the generic stuff. And I was just looking at the website as you were talking. I'm like, oh, Dan Martell spoke at their last AAL. We work with his company, so I can mention that, and it just becomes hyper relevant. And the odds of us getting a response are maybe go from a 5% response rate from a typical cold email to north of 50% or even higher.
100%.
Like emails like that are really well done. I mean, they're getting 90, 80% plus response rates. Not that it's going to happen to everybody all the time, but if you can really do that and you're actually a good fit for the brand.
And just, I want to clarify something. It's exactly what you said. How long did that take us? 60 seconds. It's a lot of people think that this research takes an hour, 2 hours per lead, and that's just not true. It's not. It took 60 seconds.
Yeah, it's awesome. Cool. I feel like that went by really fast. We covered so much, but I think this is really valuable to me and the listeners. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up? And then also remind people where they can find the book. The link will be down below.
Yeah, dude. I mean, we really just scratched the surface, I think, on what I talk about. I mean, we really just talked about the first 2 chapters, which was pitching and negotiating. And I've got 6, other steps that I talk about in my framework. And really, it's that execution part, actually, that is in that subtitle of the book, which is the concept, the actual creation of the content, the feedback round, the publication, the analysis, those actual steps, I've actually found to be where the brand or the company decides ultimately whether they want to hire you again or not. What is it actually like working with you during the execution phase? So there's a lot of optimization and improvement that can be made in those steps. And so if you want to, if this tickled your brain, if you, especially if sponsorships are a way in which you're driving revenue from your newsletter or your media business, you can go to sponsormagnet.com and pick up a copy, or just like buy one for your whole company or your team. I mean, that would be cool too. I would appreciate that one.
Why not? And it's really actionable. And you can also, I mean, your table of contents is so good because I can just go to like what I'm looking for and I can just find the section on that immediately. And maybe next time we'll talk about execution, because that's what gets you renewals. That's what enables you to charge a higher price. And renewals are so important in the sponsorship business because you don't want to have to pitch new brands every single time. And so people should go read the book to check that out. But that's it. Justin, thanks for doing this. And I'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks again, man.